Now settle in and let me tell you about a rabbit. Not a real rabbit. Not yet. A stuffed one, plump and soft, with velveteen fur the color of marmalade and white, and little thread whiskers that stuck out in a most dignified way. He arrived on Christmas morning, nestled in the top of a boy's stocking. And for a few bright hours, he was the most wonderful thing in the world. The boy held him and turned him over and pressed his face into that soft fur, and the rabbit felt something warm and tremendous move through his stuffing. But children at Christmas have a great many things to look at. By afternoon, there were mechanical toys with keys in their backs, and a tin soldier that marched on his own, and the rabbit. Well, the rabbit was set aside on the nursery shelf. He sat there in the quiet, among all the other toys, and he waited. He didn't know yet what he was waiting for, but something in him sensed it was coming. The wisest creature in the nursery was the skin horse. He was old, older than any of the other toys could remember, and his coat had worn thin in patches, and most of his mane had been loved away. But his eyes were still kind, and he had a way of speaking that made you feel the words, long after he'd finished saying them. The rabbit asked him one evening, very quietly, what it meant to be real, and the skin horse was still for a moment before he answered. Real, he said, isn't the way you're made. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you, really loves you, not just for a little while, but truly and deeply, then you become real. It doesn't happen all at once. It takes a long time. And it hurts sometimes, he said. Your fur gets shabby and your joints get loose and maybe an eye comes loose. But by the time you are real, those things don't matter anymore. Because once you are real, you can never become unreal again. Then one night, one ordinary, unremarkable night, the boy's nanny couldn't find his usual sleeping companion, and she reached for the Velveteen Rabbit and tucked him into the boy's arms. And that was that. From that night on, the rabbit slept beside the boy every single night. He was carried into the garden on warm afternoons and propped against a tree while the boy played nearby. He was brought to the seaside and buried up to his ears in sand and dragged along on picnics and held tight through thunderstorms. His fur grew soft from so much handling. His velveteen began to wear. One ear went a little limp, but the boy loved him absolutely, the way children love the things that belong only to them, with a fierce and tender certainty. And slowly, without the rabbit quite knowing when it began, something was changing, something deep and quiet, the way a seed changes underground before anything shows above the soil. Summer came, long and golden, and the boy and the rabbit spent most of it in the garden. They had a special place there, a hollow among the raspberry canes, where the grass grew soft and the light came through green and dappled. The boy made believe that the rabbit was truly alive, and he said it so sincerely, with such conviction, that sometimes the rabbit almost believed it himself. One evening, at the edge of the wood, the rabbit saw two creatures watching him from the bracken. They were brown and wild-eyed, and they moved like wind through grass, fluid, effortless, alive in a way he had never seen before. Real rabbits. He looked down at his stuffed paws. He couldn't hop the way they hopped. He couldn't ripple through the undergrowth, and yet something in him reached toward them like a flower toward toward the sun. He didn't know what he was, but he knew he wanted to be more than he was. He knew he was becoming. Then the boy got sick. It came on fast. The high fever, the flushed cheeks, the long weeks of lying very still beneath cool sheets. And through all of it, the rabbit was there. He lay curled beside the boy in the sick room, close enough to touch, night after night, week after week. He listened to the boy's breathing and felt the warmth of his hand. He was never alone, and neither was the boy. But when the illness finally broke, when the doctor came, and the curtains were pulled open, and the sunlight came flooding back in, the doctor said the room must be aired. Everything must be thoroughly cleaned. And the old stuffed rabbit, along with the soiled bedding, was gathered up and carried out to the garden to be burned. It was decided so quickly, so carelessly, as if the rabbit were simply a thing and not what he had become. He was put into a sack in the garden, in the cold, and left to wait for morning. The night was long and cold and very dark. The rabbit lay in the sack among the rubbish and thought about the boy, the warm weight of his hand, the sound of his breathing in the night, the way he had said, "I love you," rabbit as easily as breathing. And the rabbit thought, this is the end of me. He had been so close. He had been becoming something, slowly, quietly, year by year, and now it was finished. And in that moment, in that quiet, aching moment, something happened that had never happened before. A tear formed at the corner of the rabbit's eye. A single, small, real tear, and it fell, and where it fell, a flower grew up from the cold ground. And from the heart of the flower stepped a figure made of light and green things and the soft breath of wild places. She was the nursery magic fairy. She was the one who kept the promises that love makes. She knelt down beside him and lifted him gently in her hands. She kissed him, and the world changed. Not all at once, but all the way through. He felt his stuffing give way to something warmer, something that breathed and pulsed. His limp ear straightened. His thread whiskers became true whiskers, fine and quivering. His velveteen softened into real fur, dense and brown and living. His paws touched the earth, and he knew how to use them. He was real, truly, finally, irrevocably real. And that spring, when the boy was well again and playing in the garden, he came across a rabbit in the raspberry canes. A wild brown rabbit with bright eyes who looked at him in a way that no wild thing had ever quite looked at him before. The boy didn't know. He couldn't have known. He only thought, what a lovely rabbit, and walked on. But the rabbit stayed there, watching for a long time. And maybe, he remembered everything. And maybe that was enough. That is the whole of the story, and all of it is true.